Hi, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the third part of our EMS webinar series. Before we get going, I'd like to just hit on a couple housekeeping items. First is that this session is being recorded, so if you'd like to go back after the webinar and view this session, please do so, and we'll be sending out that link. Also, please raise your hand through the chat window at any point if you have questions as we go through the material in the webinar, and we will do our best to answer questions at the end of the session today. Third is the first two parts of the webinar series have been pasted into the chat window, and what has been pasted is the YouTube link for those. So if you missed either one of the first two in this series, please feel free to grab the links and go out and take a look. So again, welcome this morning. My name is Tom Ross. I am the Mobility and Security Practice Manager here at Coretek, and it is my pleasure to host this series and to have with me today Chris Shelda, our Microsoft Architect. Welcome back, Chris.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
You're welcome. I'd also like to give a shout out to Karen Shelda, who is running the webinar today and will be taking questions. So thank you, Karen, for being here and helping out. Great. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go through a really quick recap of part 1 and 2 of the series and what we talked about. There's a lot of material, so it's going to be very, very high level, and I encourage you to go out and take a look on YouTube. Then we're going to talk about the landscape in security today. You know, what are we facing? What are the types of attacks that we're under? Then we're going to dig into EMS and talk about how it meets the challenges that enterprises are facing today. Then we're going to go into what we call better together, and that's really taking all the pieces of the EMS suite and talking about how they really work together to orchestrate a full defense. So I'm pretty excited about it. I think I've learned a lot through this series. And then Chris has a demo for us, and then we're going to go into questions and answers. So I'm not going to spend any time here. The links are in the chat window, so please, again, go out to YouTube and take a look. So recapping what we've talked about, really in our first session, we talked a lot about device proliferation and consumerization of IT. So what we had really in the earlier days of mobility was a few corporate provided devices such as the BlackBerry, Windows CE. Again, they were great devices for what they did. IT had very strong control over those devices, and it was another system that you could manage from end to end. After the introduction of the iPhone, things really started to turn on its head, and what you've seen is over time the release of more devices and platforms, and that's opened up those platforms really to consumers and started to fragment security around them and how we can put them under management with our information on it. And then as we really come up to current, the new term you may have heard is the Internet of Things. And the Internet of Things is really a continued proliferation of devices and really pieces of our lives now that are on the Internet, from, you know, manufacturing controls, medical systems, to our refrigerators. So what is being projected is there'll be 20 billion web-connected devices by 2020. So this is a real threat because it opens up a lot more attack vectors. So let's move on. So what are the challenges that we are facing today? What I tell my customers is that MDM today is not enough. You can manage the device, but it really is not taking control or managing the things that are most important to you, which is your data and your information. If you look at the users that you have in your organizations today, they're the Gen Y that are just coming out of school. They've grown up with technology. They expect to use technology, and they want to use the technology that is important to them. And really what it comes down to is if you want to attract and keep today's talent, you have to be able to cater to those people but manage, again, your information. Those people are going to do the things they need to do to get their jobs done. We call that term shadow IT, where they're going out and signing up for services like file sync and share and moving things between systems without your knowledge. So really what this brings us to is identity is the new perimeter. And what we mean by that is now you're not necessarily managing the devices, which you are, but you're not managing them solely. What you're managing now is really your user and what is your user touching in the way of device. So with that user, you're managing their credentials, you're managing the information they touch and how they can do that. So EMS is what we talked about in part 2. So what is EMS? EMS is a full suite of products that really look at this new dynamic in the workplace and help you manage all parts of that mobility stack or mobility, mobility spectrum. So first you're looking at Active Directory, Azure Active Directory, which basically is giving you single sign-ons to the number of the thousands of web apps and SaaS apps that are in the market today. Then we look at Microsoft Advanced Threat Analytics, and really what this is to help you as an organization identify threats that are presented to your organization today, and then be able to act on those quickly. Microsoft Intune is MDM, and it's helping you manage that device, helping you through the life cycle of that device. And lastly is Azure Rights Management, which again is focusing on the user, focusing on that information, and really helping you secure what's most important to you. So let's look at today's landscape. I was at a CIO forum yesterday, and the speaker, David Kennedy, was very, very good and interesting. And what was neat was he was touching on the things that we really have been talking about in this webinar series. And again, it's that the end user now is your perimeter. And what he is saying is that attackers, their main method for attack is compromising you, is compromising the end user. And he went through a lot of the social engineering that really would blow your mind. It's simple things that you don't think of, like what you put on LinkedIn. He can look at LinkedIn and basically know what types of systems you're using, know when you've implemented it, and then what types of attacks to launch from there. So it was very, very interesting, and it was nice to see validation from an expert in the market. So there's other industry leaders. In this case, it's the FBI, basically saying that there are two types of companies, one that have been hacked and ones that know or don't know they've been hacked. And again, really what that means is that once an attacker infiltrates you and your company, most of the time they're on your systems for months, if not a year, really moving around your environment, looking at your information, stealing your information, and it takes quite a while, one, to find them, and then once you have found them, it really takes quite a while, in this case, the FBI is saying up to 80 days to recover from a full attack. And most importantly is what it costs your organization. So the impact, the impact that we're seeing in the industry is that it's costing companies and industry as a whole $3 trillion. And the average cost of a data breach is about $3.5 million to your company. So the traditional systems that we look at to protect ourselves and our users from, attacks from hackers would be malware, antivirus. And what's interesting is that about almost half of the compromised systems had malware protection and were up to date. And that a lot of the attacks that were hitting those systems were actually attacks that had been released a year prior. So really the systems that we have in place and the systems we rely on are not doing the job. So when a company is under assault, how quickly is a user penetrating your organization? Basically, when a spear phishing attack is happening, what is found is that about 23% of your users are actually opening up those phishing emails, and from there 11% are clicking on the links or attachments that have been included in that email, and that this is happening within about the first hour of the attack. And again, it's things that you may not know about for a year after it happens, so it's pretty scary. So with that, I guess I'd like to get you involved in the conversation, Chris. I've been sitting here kind of, going through what we're seeing as Coretek. How about you? What are you seeing, and how are you seeing that EMS is, helping meet the challenges that we're seeing, the changing threats?
Yeah, so I mean, today it's, from our customer standpoint, we're seeing a lot of customers that, I mean, they're probably, every customer has been penetrated in one way or another. They just don't know it. They don't know how to detect it. And a lot of them are security conscious and are fearful of it, but they don't know what to do about it. So where it comes into play is with Microsoft, they've really done a lot of research, worked with their customers to understand what's going on, what features they're looking for from a security standpoint, and they've been working with security leaders in the industry to understand where these threats are at. So they've done a lot, and they continue to improve the Enterprise Mobility Suite with Microsoft to kind of detect, remediate, and monitor all of these types of attacks. So one of the big pieces of EMS, which is, I think it's hugely valuable, but it seems like if there's one of these things that's not like the other, it's this one. Because the first three that we really went through in the couple first parts were Azure Active Directory, right? That's cloud-based service. We got Intune, cloud-based service, and Azure Rights Management, cloud-based service. And then we got ATA, which is Advanced Threat Analytics. That's not a cloud-based service.
Right.
That's actually running on-prem on your servers to protect your identities. Because most corporations that are, at least medium to large size, most small organizations, their source of identity typically is Active Directory, right? And that's running on domain controllers on-prem. And those domain controllers, of course, could be in a Azure subscription as well, but in general, we consider that kind of on-prem or hybrid solution. The customer is really controlling that identity. And so you have all these cloud solutions, but if your true core identity is on-prem, you need to protect that. And what we're talking about with these new attack vectors is these attacks are really targeted at your Active Directory credentials, because that's usually just the keys to the castle, right? And laterally moving up to get more and more rights. So that's where Advanced Threat Analytics comes into play. Let me just kind of go through kind of this attack kill chain, just kind of how this works in general. Is that initially you have the attackers are looking at, external recon, like you're talking about, checking out LinkedIn and profiles and just doing a little bit of social engineering, trying to understand what's going on. They then compromise a machine, or maybe they're looking for user accounts. They do kind of some sort of sweep or scan and are looking up email addresses and are going out doing some phishing attacks. Get a compromised machine. So they're on that machine now, and they may have some low-level permissions and privileges. And they're just sitting there and they're watching and they're waiting. They're doing some internal recon and maybe seeing what else they can find on the network, doing some more scans, finding out what other users might have more rights. And so they continue that, and this low privilege escalation happens where they find another account that they can compromise, pass the hash some other way from a local admin creds that were on the device already. They compromise those creds. Now they're an admin. And now they do more recon from that perspective, and they are just sitting there waiting, to get more information. And then at that point, they can do remote code execution because they have admin rights and start pulling even more information, and that can all be happening, in a week time frame type of thing.
Right.
And this just continues to happen until they're detected and eradicated. So then they're doing more of this lateral movement to get up, and maybe they're local admins, and then they get to domain admin level, and now they have complete domain dominance, not just on the individual compromised workstations, but across the organization. And wow, at that point, now they really have a lot of power. They can pretty much get to everything. And it's just, at that point, that is the highest risk.
So that's really getting in and I'll say just taking control of one or two accounts could really give them the keys to the kingdom.
Exactly. And in knowing customers that I've seen, there are some customers that are better than others in terms of making sure there's least privilege access. Not everybody is a domain admin, but there are some that have it's kind of scary how many people are in the domain admin group or enterprise admins. So it's just a larger attack surface. But even if there's a couple, the way that they're doing these attacks these days, without being able to detect this and prevent it and remediate quickly, just using social engineering, a lot of these attackers can get deep access to all of your information. So then they get their assets, and if they have everything before they're detected, then they're done. They wipe their hands and they're on to the next one. Right. So really, you need to detect these attackers before they cause the damage. That's the key. You have to have assumptions to know that you are compromised. Just assume compromise, but needing to detect and remediate before any assets are lost is the key. So that's really where advanced threat analytics comes into play. And as you see here, this is where it plays, right? So starting from the internal recon to the point where the asset access, that's where advanced threat analytics really plays. So, and really traditional IT security tools, they have a lot of problems. And I know there's a lot of companies out there that have tried this tool, that tool, whatever else. A lot of times they're very complex. There's a lot of initial setup, fine-tuning. You have to create all these rules, policies. It's just not out of the box ready to go.
Right.
So you're constantly tweaking, trying to get this all working. It can take a long time to get that time to value of when you're actually ready to, I'm ready to be detecting everything. I feel comfortable with it.
Right.
There's also prone to false positives. A lot of times you get many reports of something that may sort of be a problem, may sort of look like an attack, but you get inundated by all these alerts and these reports that it becomes, you kind of go numb to it. You're kind of like, all right, this is alert overload. Since there's so much information, it doesn't mean anything to me, and then you kind of just block it out, ignore it. And at that point, that's not good, because now there might be something that's actually relevant, but you don't have time to look through it, and you're not going to deal with it.
Right.
So that loses a lot of value from those traditional IT security tools. And then a lot of these are also designed to protect the perimeter. But when actual user credentials are stolen, they've already passed the perimeter, and so those defenses are pretty much pointless at that point.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you say that, because at the conference I was at yesterday, this person used the example of basically portraying that they were a user of the company and calling into the help desk, making it look like they came from within the company, and within about 60 seconds had the help desk person clicking on links at a bogus website and was able to take over that person's computer. And the point is, you could have the best network access control systems, but if that's the one thing you're relying on, this person was on the network already, so they've passed that security hurdle or standard, and they're off and running.
Yeah, so already past the perimeter. They may not have the full user credentials, but maybe they have a hash of their credentials, and they can use that. And a lot of help desk people may have elevated rights in some systems, so they'll start poking around. Yeah, that's a great example. And so when it really comes down to it, is we need to find a solution that provides user and entity behavioral analytics. So UEBA is an acronym there, new one to learn. In general, Gartner, who is watching, this landscape here as well, they've said specifically that the enterprises that successfully use this user-based entity behavior analytics, they're able to detect this malicious behavior and abusive behavior that would otherwise go unnoticed, right? So this is kind of the key to it, because otherwise this looks like innocuous type of traffic. Oh, somebody's logging in with good credentials. Okay, that doesn't raise any red flags. But you need to be looking at the behaviors of, is that a typical behavior of that user?
Right.
Okay, so then this is a completely different way of looking at it. So, normal just SIEM and DLP is just looking at, all right, specific data that gets leaked out, maybe, okay, or somebody's is logging with the wrong, username and password. But these types of attack is way beyond that. They know they can't be using failed attempts within the network, because that'll be found. So these monitors, they use multiple data sources for machine learning, and they use the profiles to create baselines for these users. so that you can see what's out of the norm for them, and really it evaluates the activities in a timeline view to understand the entire attack type of transition and timeline, so you can trace back where the issue happened and where you're at risk. So that's where Microsoft Advanced Threat Analytics come to play. This is, like I said before, it's an on-premises platform to identify advanced security attacks and insider threats before they cause that damage. So that's the goal here. And so it brings this behavioral analytics concept to IT and the organization's users. And then we'll dive into this a little bit more.
So that was last week. You had shown the user Garth logging in, and then also using the scenario that Garth, while logging in here from Michigan, was logging in from Russia. And that being, you know, it's a pretty basic example, but still it's out of a pattern or something you can see. There's no way Garth can be in those two places at one time.
Right, and that brings up a good point, is that a lot of this is really simple to offer as a service in the cloud. Actually, that specifically we're talking about the advanced security reporting through Azure Active Directory Premium. As a service, and with all the capabilities Microsoft has and all the points that they're looking at in terms of data points and logins, they can surface all that data and give you actionable information, or even trigger like a multi-factor authentication, that type of thing. So one way to think about advanced threat analytics is that's kind of this advanced security reporting that usually is in the cloud, but you're bringing that to your on-prem data center. Bring that intelligence into your data center and looking at your logins. So you're not like just, hey, Microsoft or cloud services, just like, we're going to send you all the data from our domain controllers over login activity. Yeah, probably some security concerns. So yeah, this keeps everything on-prem in your control in terms of this monitoring. So, you know, from a security standpoint, it's a way better way to handle that. And it can be from, so there's some sort of appliance, there's a collector, there's a gateway. I won't go into too deep of specifics there. It has to be looking at all the domain controllers in terms of the authentication traffic. So there's a way, traditionally, prior to just a recent release, you had to turn on port mirroring for all of your domain controllers, and they would view all of that, the authentication traffic. Just recently, there was a new version released where it can be installed, like an agent installed on your domain controller, so you don't have to do port mirroring. Sometimes it's really hard to do, depending on the switches you have, branch offices, and whatever else. So this is very seamless now. You can have this agent on a domain controller and be collecting all those authentication, or the activities, and putting them in to the collector and analyzing that for you. So the benefits really is just that those behavioral analytics I talked about, that's a huge benefit. This is what ATA brings. And it adapts very quickly. It adapts as fast as the enemies. So even some new way they think of figuring something out and going about it, it protects against those types of attacks because it can view everything that's happening within the environment, and anything that's suspicious is happening. And really, you can focus on what's important very quickly using a very simplified timeline. That's critical to not have that information overload and being able to make quick decisions on what needs to happen if some sort of breach seems to be detected, and having that sort of information brought to you.
What I thought was interesting is you also detailed the ability of the suite to see those changes in behavior and automatically be able to take action to, say, for example, invoke multi-factor authentication. So now it becomes something the user has and knows, where an attacker wouldn't know that, even if it's adding a PIN number for a one-time authentication, just because the patterns and things that we're seeing in an organization are not normal.
Right. Yeah, and that's where there's a lot of different options of how you want to handle the triggers and the actions based off of this, and whether you just want to send an email, or whether you want to take some action, suspend the account, or however you want to handle that. So, but the key thing is getting all the information first and making sure it's not false positives.
Right.
Right. And truly, this solution really reduces those false positives that you'd see from a lot of other type of technologies. And really, the really thing is it prioritizes a plan for your next steps. Not just saying, hey, detected something, go have fun. It's, look, this is what we found, and we think you should do this, this, and this to resolve it. So you actually have actionable data to work with.
Right.
So what I'm going to do real quick is show a demo now. This is kind of a static demo in a way. So what has some kind of an attack already, let's say, in play. And let me just pull this up here. Make that a little bit bigger here. Okay. And let's pull this up here. So basically, what we're looking at is kind of a moment of time type of thing in a console where there has been an attack that's happened, and kind of like walk you through what you would see from that standpoint and how you would deal with that type of information. So what we're seeing here is a timeline view, right? So we have showing June 2016 here, right? This is it's 7. So this is the latest thing that happened. And so we go back to the beginning of this timeline view. It essentially takes all these activities that it's found, it's linking them together for you, so you don't have to make those links. So what it found is that initially services were exposed, exposing account credentials. There was a service here that we're running, and 13 accounts were exposed using a just clear text LDAP bind. So here's the exposed account. So already advanced threat analytics say, hey, I found this. I'm monitoring these accounts to see if anything suspicious is happening. So also there's honey tokens. You can do kind of a honeypot that ATA can work with to say, hey, I'm just going to put this out here, make it look like it's some asset or some way that an attacker could get more access, but it's really kind of fake, and it's waiting for an attacker to hit it. Once they do, it's like, okay, well, I know the only thing that would hit this would be an attacker. Nobody would normally hit this.
So you're setting a trap, basically.
Yep, setting a trap. So seemed like there was a trap. There's set, and a user attempted to log in and access this. So all of a sudden, it's like, well, looks like somebody might be trying to do something. And recommendations are, disconnect relevant computers because there's a specific system, the EXT vendor-TS, that was the one that they're seeing that was trying to connect to that honeypot.
Very interesting.
Right. So you can get very deep into what's happening here to do some forensics analysis.
So in the case of a compromised machine that you normally wouldn't detect or may not detect right away, this is a way to look at the behavior of that machine and say, okay, it's not going places I expect it to go, looking at things I expect, and being able to quickly detect that.
Exactly.
That's great.
Yeah, very difficult if you're just looking at logs from a firewall or something. Like, I don't know how you really make a correlation on your own.
Right.
To some attack like that. So another thing here, and this is going to come from the external side, so it's like an external terminal server, seeing there is a reconnaissance using account enumeration to actually find these accounts. So looks like somebody did 105 guess attempts and found a whole bunch of accounts that were there. So that was something that it's saying, this is a medium risk here. Nothing's necessarily happened yet, but you need to be aware of this. They're telling you to, disconnect the server, investigate the root cause of this, verify that all the accounts on our existing accounts use a strong password, right? So then we get to this point, and now there's a brute force attack using LDAP simple bind. So essentially, they got these user accounts, and now they're looking to get passwords. So they're brute forcing, trying to get the passwords, and ended up, after 450 guess attempts, they got this Michael Dubinsky's account credentials, right? And normally maybe you might have some account lockouts. Maybe they're doing this enough of brute force that it's kind of outside of the policy that doesn't lock out the account or whatever else, so it's just under the radar. It's a course of a week or whatever that keeps trying. But either way, now it's found. Now all your traditional tools, they're kind of worthless because these are leaked credentials. These look like normal, good traffic from a user account. So now we get to this red here. Right now we have a high risk because now it's found is that there's suspicion of identity theft based on normal behavior. So this Michael Dubinsky account, all of a sudden, there's a normal behavior found that they've not seen, that hasn't seen over the last month. It's seeing that there's interactive logon on from 4 workstations, 2 abnormal servers, 5 abnormal resources, exceed the normal amount of working hours. So these are all things correlated together and adding to this risk score to say, okay, adding all this together, this is a big deal. One on its own may not be, but all this together, this is a big deal. And then you can see, okay, what are my abnormal computers? So you can click on these and see when they accessed them, get a little more information on there, see what the abnormal resources are. And then at this point, it's identified there's been a passive ticket attack, specifically from a Kerberos ticket, an administrator's Kerberos ticket. And at this point, if you found this, you'd say, okay, if that was the first piece of information you had no idea what happened before or how it got to that point and what you needed to do to fix it. So you have this timeline view, so you can go back and get root cause as well and fix what would happen the next time, and just be on the lookout for that.
Just so the folks on the phone know, we're sitting in our offices, and if you hear a loud buzzing sound, it's a construction crew on the floor above us. So sorry for the noise. Please bear with us. Sorry, Chris.
Yeah, no problem. So some of these things here, I mean, this is critical to give you recommendations of what's going on. I'm going to dig into this a little bit more. Let me see if I dig into this one. So remote execution attempt detected. So now it's found that there's some remote execution that was detected on this server. You can see specifically, here there's like a PS executable. So a remote PowerShell command was ran via a domain controller. And so at this point, this is definite malicious activity. You need to be taking some action. So this gives you an idea of the timeline here, view of what's going on. But you can go very deep. This is just one aspect. There's
right.
many other attack vectors that this can find. So I just want to kind of illustrate that point there.
That's really interesting. That's a pretty powerful way to look at your organization.
Definitely.
And saves a lot of time for an administrator having to try to put that profile together, just like you said, going through firewall logs and SIM logs. And
yeah, and I think most IT staffs, they're already got a lot to do, right? And a lot of things are like, I've got projects, I've got tasks I need to do. Sometimes security takes a back seat. So this does a lot of that work for you so that you can actually prioritize when there is an issue, really diving into that and saying, hey, there's a reason why we need to do this. Let's take some time. So another, I'd say this kind of cool feature of EMS that is lesser known for all the customers that even have EMS today is this Cloud App Discovery feature. This is one way that you can really reveal shadow IT in the organization. Like we talked about users that, because they need to get their job done, they use different SaaS apps, file and share and sync apps, Dropbox box, all those. And we've seen, and Microsoft has done studies in terms of going to organizations saying, hey, how many SaaS apps do you think that your organization uses? Your users, whether they're sanctioned, unsanctioned, and they'll give a number. Like, okay, interesting. Let's run this Cloud App Discovery and actually see what's being used in your environment. And it's like an order of magnitude more than they think. Like 10 times more SaaS apps. And organizations are like, I had no idea. It's like, no, there's no way you really could.
right.
You don't have any tools in place to really understand that. So what happens here is with Cloud App Discovery is there's an agent base for your Windows PCs. You push it out to your PCs, and this could be whether you're on your network or whether they're outside the network, domain joined PCs, and different levels of privacy settings and how much you're collecting, so you can control that how your organization needs to. But what it does then, it discovers all these applications in your environment, and I don't really have a demo here, so I'll try to explain what we're seeing from the screenshots here. Pulls all these applications and says how much data is being moved through these applications, and to let you know, hey, these are unmanaged. Would you like to add them into management? A lot of these applications, 2,600, like we talked about before, applications that are available for a single sign-on through Azure Active Directory. So you can, with a one-click, kind of bring those into management. Maybe this opens up conversations with your end users to be like, okay, I see you're using this application, maybe it's Box or Dropbox. Did you know that we have an enterprise storage, capability, like OneDrive for Business or something like that? And bringing them into, they're getting migrated into that so that you can have control over your data, or, at least being able to monitor to see which ones they're using, and maybe you got to put something else into place to put some controls around that if that is truly business critical.
Right.
But the idea here is this is discovery. This is giving you an idea of like where to start, right? But free with, it's included with EMS. So this is something like if you have EMS, there's no reason that you shouldn't be running this. Read through the docs or whatever in terms of privacy, security concerns. But from what I've seen, there hasn't been a company that says, no, we definitely cannot do this because of privacy or security. It's your domain control computers. You can say just surface business apps, not personal apps, whatever. But very comprehensive reporting and very easy transition to manage those applications.
Right. And that really is, like you said, the I guess, a great illustration of shadow IT. These are more than likely not malicious. These are people that have a job function, and these are specific to a job function, and are going there to be productive. And this really, gives a way for, in my mind, organizations to kind of work with their users to make sure things are sanctioned and managed. Because these may be things that they wouldn't shut off, but just need to know they're there.
Exactly. One other thing I want to touch on too, another lesser-known feature capability of EMS is the Microsoft Identity Management Server. A lot of this capability this used to be FIM, as other people might know it as, and they've rolled this into some of the directory synchronization product that they use for Azure AD and Office 365 to sync users' passwords, federation.
Right. But
there's other pieces of MIM that go beyond that can help in terms of security and this identity side of things. And I want to just touch on a couple pieces there. Now, there's different scenarios where this makes sense or may not make sense. This definitely works with on-prem applications. You can help with user provisioning and a handful of other things. But in general, the cloud-ready identities here, so automatic preparation of Active Directory identities, that's going to be kind of your Azure AD Connect tool, which is a little separate from this, but this can do the same. You can do password reset on-prem and multi-factor authentication on-prem with servers instead of having to use a cloud service. So you can use that for this too. Dynamic groups and approvals, user provisioning, deprovisioning into groups, and membership changes can be all automated through this as well. So this is kind of a powerful tool that can automate a lot of that kind of user account life cycle in a way. But the main thing I want to focus on here is from the enhanced security. So you can do hybrid reporting and privileged access management to protect your administrator accounts. And there's also some new security protocols that can handle. So I want to dig into the privileged access management, also known as PAM, because we have to have an acronym for everything, of course. This is really intriguing because, like I said before, a lot of users or a lot of organizations have many users that are domain admins. I need to get my job done, right? But do they truly need to have domain admin access 24/7 to get their job done?
Absolutely not.
Probably not. Well, what's the alternative? Oh, well, maybe one person does and somebody has to request manually they give them access. Well, that's not sustainable. That's not automated.
Right.
So think about putting that together and say, all right, let's by default give all these users no domain admin access. And then say, but you are allowed to have self-elevation for a certain time period to get your job done. But that's going to be audited and tracked separately. So that if somebody was to compromise your credentials, it's just an extra hurdle. It's just they can't just get in and grab domain admin privileges and go across the environment really quickly. It's another measure to prevent those attacks from proliferating. So essentially, you create a separate forest that is just this identity forest, and you create some shadow groups in order to facilitate this. And there's automations through a web page and through some other mechanisms and tools to allow that access. Maybe you have approval workflows where you request that somebody has to approve it, but it makes it very seamless, or you just kind of request it and automatically have it, but it's going to expire in an hour or something like that. So this is really interesting because this is part of EMS. It's a little bit of it's a bit to implement and to do it properly, and your Active Directory needs to be in a certain state, most likely to kind of facilitate this. So you might want to look at making sure everything's kind of cleaned up and standardized first before you implement this. But if you're already to that maturity level and everything is well organized, standardized in Active Directory, and you want to take it to the next level, this is a huge capability in making sure that definitely only the people that need it have access. And it doesn't have to be domain admin. It can be from other groups too that have access to your SQL servers. You have access to these other applications or whatever else. So it doesn't just have to be from a domain admin standpoint.
It's really interesting the level of integration you have with all the different systems. With Microsoft. Your domain controller at the base level, but all these systems work together and can give you a high degree of intelligence and capability. And like you said, these are things that I think companies really, IT organizations can grow into. You start at a base level and you build as, like you said, you get things in place, get them established, and then go up the, up the chain from there. So this is fantastic.
Yeah, I highly recommend not just going, I want everything right now. You really have to look at where you're at today, what makes the biggest impact to implement, and you have to have that kind of strategy in general. Otherwise, you're not going to get anywhere if you just try to do everything all at once, right? So, getting this better together story, not only from EMS standpoint within EMS, all the components that are better working together instead of just buying just Intune, but having all the components. There's other Microsoft services that I've seen a lot of customers also have that I want to show why EMS just works and plays better with those too. So the first one is going to be Office 365. There are many organizations out there that are already actively using Office 365, and I think it's coming, like I think we talked about before, it's not necessarily a if, it's kind of a when type of question now of when they get there.
And I'm seeing it in industries that swore up and down they would never take their information to the cloud, and now they can't move fast enough.
Exactly, and the reason is because there was a trust thing, right? They're like, I don't know if I trust the cloud, but as they've seen, as customers have seen, because of how diligent Microsoft is with their security, getting compliance certifications, and giving customers the tools that they need to protect their information, in a lot of ways it's more protected in the cloud than it is on-prem. Right? So I think a lot of customers are starting to see that, and that's why we're seeing the shift of that mindset. And it's just been proven now. It's been out there now for years, and they've seen that there haven't been any big issues, big leakages because of the technology there. So one thing I want to touch on too, I kind of touched on this before, but this really makes sense from a better together situation, the conditional access. So EMS on its own, yes, okay, this is a management tool, but the tool is just a tool. Your users need to access applications, need to access data, right? So what conditional access brings together with Office 365 specifically is that you can, based off of the user identity, whether the device is registered and trusted by your organization, domain join, you can turn on or off access to SharePoint Online, OneDrive Business, email, all the Office 365 applications, so that if you're in a non-compliant state, if it's a jailbroken device or that type of thing, it says, sorry, you can't get to this, but if you want to access it, go ahead and not jailbreak your device, or might be one thing. Make sure you have updated, antivirus if it's a Windows PC or something like that, and now we'll allow you access to this. So, it's that device could be in a compliant state when you first enroll, but it drifts. So that's where this ensures that you're always going to be in a compliant state in the way that you want it. Make sure there's a password, a PIN code set, something like that. So that's just one way. It works very seamlessly with Office 365. I mean, from an email perspective, if it's not compliant, you'll go to your email box and you have one email. It says, sorry, you're not compliant. Here's what you need to do. You do that. All of a sudden, your emails show up again now on your mobile device. So it really is that part of that protecting the data, right, and ensuring the device itself is compliant and in a state that you believe that you can trust it, right?
And this is an automated process, basically, where you set your parameters?
Correct. Yeah. So you set your parameters based off the users, the groups. There's a lot of variables. You can say based off location. You can get to it when you're inside the network, but you can't get to it when you're outside the network, right? So, and based off of each application, you can have different rules from that standpoint. And then depending on the device, whether it's the form factor, whether it's mobile device or Windows PC, and whether it's domain joined or not. So yeah, putting all these variables together, you create your own policies around that, but customized to your organization. So in general, just Office 365 and EMS work so well together with transport rules for exchange, data loss prevention, but also using Azure RMS to encrypt emails, let's say, and that plugs into the Office Outlook applications, and actually all the Office applications 2013 through 2016 plugs in seamlessly into it. And then, yeah, and just all the templates they have, everything just works better together when you're talking about Office 365 and EMS. So if you have Office 365, I take a strong look at EMS from that perspective because it's just going to work very seamlessly. Look, there's a little tile here too. Okay. So this is an interesting topic here. This was kind of on that one of those earlier slides that showed the EMS, those 4 components, and there's a 5th component there that was not necessarily under EMS. It was called Cloud App Security. And that's another one of Microsoft's mobility solutions. Now this one is based off of Microsoft's Adelon acquisition, and it's just a comprehensive cloud-delivered service, and it's built for IT and security teams to combat one of the top security concerns that are seen today, which is, how can you gain deeper visibility, stronger controls, and enhanced protection for cloud apps? Right? So we had the Cloud App Discovery, great, you can see them, but how do you control and know what's actually happening there? So the solution, it basically provides a set of capabilities to help companies both to design and enforce a process for securing those cloud apps and the cloud usage. And it uses discovery and investigation capabilities to granular control and protection with each of those applications. But the thing is, it's easy to deploy. It's easy to set up.
Right.
And it provides out-of-the-box value just immediately. And there's also rich tutorials for unlocking more advanced capabilities as well. So it's these. I mean, people are moving to the SaaS. It's whether IT is saying either sanctions it or they don't, right? If there's shadow IT. So this is happening. This is a trend. This is not stopping. And so it becomes much more of a risk to your data. And that's where Cloud App Security comes into play. And a lot of times when we're helping customers evaluate Office 365, a lot of customers ask about compliance and regulations, and are you ISO certified, HIPAA? They're very concerned about that, which is good. And that's a good step, and Office 365 has a lot of those compliance regulations covered. But then I have all your SaaS apps, and those are this big question mark. I have no idea. What's the risk of this app versus that app? You'd take so much time to figure that out.
Right.
Well, Cloud App Security is done it for you. For over 1,300 apps, SaaS apps, there's risk scores based off a number of factors that helps you understand, how risky is this application in your environment, and what can you do about it. So
that's fantastic. So it can go and do the scoring and present you with a summary.
Exactly, and let you know how much data is actually going through these applications to give you another idea of how risky that application is. And then, they give you DLP and understand what type of data is through there. You can connect to specific services and also connect to your on-prem firewall. To all that traffic can go through there, and you can get a better idea of where people are going and what they're doing. And so why customers love this, and Adelon has been doing this for a while, and Microsoft really saw the value in it. It really complemented their solution, their just overall mobility solutions. That there's no agents required for any discovery here. Like I said, it's all firewall based, and you can connect directly to services like Office 365 and like AWS. I'll show you a handful of those.
Sure.
Comprehensive controls for your sanctioned apps that you say, okay, these are the ones that I'm sanctioning, and everything else is not sanctioned. So you can really distinguish between those. Threat detection, and it actually is deeply integrated with Office 365. So I'm going to show you some discovery, data control, and threat protection here real quick. I know we're a little short on time, but I will.
There's our construction crew again.
Yep. So I'll try to talk over them. So here is Cloud App Security. Right away, you see this general dashboard here, and you can see there's 18.6 million activities monitored from this. This is a demo of tenant here, and 203 files are being monitored, and those might be, in Box or Google Drive or OneDrive for Business. 5.8 thousand users are monitored. And you can see everything here is clickable, right? You can dig deeper into everything. Right now, I'm seeing an open alert right here. It's low severities here, suspicious cloud use alert. And you see how we can upload logs from your firewalls. You can do this manually, you can do it automatically to get all this information. Connecting other applications to here, creating policies. So let's take a look at the Cloud Discovery dashboard here. So found 514 apps in the organization being used, right? And 3 of them being risky ones. So let's take a look at the risky apps. All right, so we have I Called You, OneStat, AdBase, and the score is 3. So 10 is the lowest risk, and then 1 is high risk.
Okay, so these are pretty significant risk.
Yep, and you can see right here how much traffic is uploaded and how many transactions, how many users are using that, from how many IP addresses. And you can click down here and say, okay, this is a 3. Why is that a 3? all right, so what is this? This is a customer support category, and look at all these no's, right? So from a security perspective, it, remembers password, so valid security certificate name, and from a compliance standpoint, it does not have compliance on any of these. This is the type of information it takes forever to go through to find out, and this is just surfaced for you right here. So these are, essentially, 2 of them are unsanctioned. 1 of them was sanctioned. Let's see, I'll show you also, so the Cloud App Catalog standpoint, this is all the apps that they had from the 1,300 apps that are surfaced in here. You can see that the ones that have a higher score are surfaced at the top right now. You can look at, filter by certain ones. You can look by categories. For example, the Office 365 one, you'll see all the yeses that are here, and that's why the security is much higher and the risk factor is lower, right, from that standpoint. And you can, let's see. From there, you can go to investigate, so you can see an activity log across the board and filter that down into what have my users been doing. Uploading documents, uploading files, downloading files, viewing messages. If you want to get an idea of a specific user and what they're doing, or something that's happening in a specific application or region, certain type of activity type, you can get all that information here. Files was not quite pulling up for me, but what's interesting is you can see from here, if it's a link to if there's a public link out there, or something that's public to the internet that anybody could access.
Right.
How would you find that out otherwise? This could really get deeply into OneDrive Business, Google Drive, all those Box and that type of thing to understand what files are being shared out from my organization, and then you can take action to resolve that. You can even match policies if it matches PCI, PHI, ransomware type of files. You can actually find what files are affected.
Wow.
Across all those cloud services. Okay, there's accounts here. One other thing I want to show. So adding an app. These are sanctioned apps here that we're saying, yep, these are ones that we're saying are allowed to be used in the organization. The ones that have this little icon here are ones that are connected. So you actually supply an account to connect to that, to Office 365, Google Drive, so it can have insights into that data and what's being shared out and whatnot. Other ones that are a little less integrated, you can still find out how many users are using them and how much data is being moved to it, so you have some sort of insights there. A couple extra ones I think that haven't been added already, like Amazon Web Services and ServiceNow. And then controlling, now you have policies here, like finding anomalous activity, file share without authorized domain type of thing. So you can set those policies. There's some built in already. And then alerts. So this really gives you, between all of this, what's happening. So suspicious activities. Maybe there's zombie accounts, like an account of a user that's left, but it's still sitting out there. It's open. Somebody might be able to get in and hack it and use it. Getting rid of that. Here's a good one here too. Anomalous behavior and discovered users. So Microsoft OneDrive, it was found that a total of 55 gigs were uploaded and 71 gigs were downloaded. So like, whoa, that's a lot of information.
Yeah.
What's going on here, right? That's something that you can't really get insights into otherwise, right? So this is just a really quick view here. I have a feeling we could probably do an entire webinar just on this piece, but I want to move on to, I've got a couple more slides here. Real quick, Cloud App Security is separate from EMS. Today, it's a separate product that you pay for, but there are pieces of this that are built into the Office 365 E5, like a subset of these features. So more to do with Office 365 and some of those apps, and being able to do some of that discovery and permission setting. In general, Office 365 and EMS together, they offer a lot, and we've covered a lot of that already. This is kind of a summary of that. But one thing I want to touch on now is EMS and Windows 10. Windows 10 is changing the game here. There's a lot that you can do with Windows 10, but EMS joins a party here with Azure Active Directory join. You can do an automatic MDM enrollment to Intune, so Windows 10 devices can essentially act like mobile devices in the way they're managed. Enhanced conditional access. With Microsoft Passport, you can get rid of your passwords and have that managed by EMS and enforce those policies. Enterprise data protection as well. That's something that you can protect your enterprise data versus your personal data on Windows 10 devices and actually do select wipes now. That's coming soon in the next major release. A lot of this stuff can be done from Config Manager as well, I just want to point out,
Right.
for your devices that are inside your network and manage, domain join. But from EMS standpoint, especially from bring your own device type of situation or choose your own device, ones that are not necessarily going to be in the environment a lot, or you don't have Config Manager, EMS has a huge play there. So just a quick summary of some of those pieces. There's so much. I think we're going to need a webinar on just Windows 10 on how this all works together. And in general, too, you want to look, when you're looking at Windows 10, really look at Enterprise versus Pro. There are a lot of enterprise-grade security features, capabilities that you get only with Enterprise. I mean, you really need to take a deep look at that, specifically around this device guard, this pass-the-hash mitigations as well, and some of the other things you can lock down and have granular control over. So that pretty much wraps up that portion of it.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. You know, it's really interesting because prior to us sitting down, a lot of my customers would talk about, oh, Intune, Intune, Intune. And really, I guess I knew EMS was there. I knew some of the high levels of EMS, but never really realized just how deep the solution is. And it seems like Microsoft really has looked at today's realities. It's not, you know, the old methodology of trying to just manage an app. It's managing the data. It's managing where you're going to pass that data. It's managing the user. And, you know, a validation, again, of what you just showed on that chart was the different use cases were a lot of the things they were talking about yesterday.
Yep.
You know, and it really seems like they've really hit a home run here. And again, I can't thank you enough for your time. And
yeah, and in general, you know, Microsoft continues to innovate, and they're not stopping here. They continue to add value without bringing the price up too. So
right.
You're kind of buying into futures here, and this is a great platform, but it's going to just continue to get better.
Right.
You know?
Well, it definitely looks that way. And again, thank you. For the folks on the phone, thank you for your time. If you have any questions, please feel free to put those in the chat window. Karen, we have any questions that have come in?
I have one. It looks like it came in here. Somebody asked, so we have another MDM solution, and they just moved to Office 365, and they want to know if EMS will still offer value. So I know they probably want to name the MDM solution, but there's a lot of them out there, and it's typical. Most organizations have some sort of an MDM solution out there, but as hopefully you've seen is that there's all these other capabilities that most MDM solutions can't provide, which is the identity and access protection, that advanced threat analytics, even just in and of itself the application management. And what's interesting is that with a lot of the legacy MDM solutions, you can use the mobile application management from Intune to manage your Office applications. And that's something that we mentioned before, is that Intune is the only MAM at this point that can manage the Office applications on a mobile device.
Right.
So that can work together with that. You don't have to fully replace it if that's, you know, you've made investments or whatever else. But EMS can augment that, even the Intune portion of that.
So that whole idea of better together can extend even beyond Microsoft products. Exactly. They integrate and play well with other products in the marketplace.
Yep, and definitely a trend I'm seeing Microsoft really trying to play well with others, and they're doing a really good job of that.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Do you have anything else?
So one other quick one it looks like is, so somebody says that their security team is concerned about security of Active Directory when they connect it up to Azure Active Directory and the public cloud. They want to move towards Office 365 and EMS, but I wonder if we have any ways that we can help their concerns for their security team. I mean, I'd really say that the way that things are protected and the information that's going up into Azure Active Directory can be filtered. There's only certain attributes going there. They're not necessarily your passwords either. And if you use ADFS, you don't even have, passwords are not actually leaving your environment at all. Not even the hash of the hash is leaving your environment. Right. And that authentication is coming back on-prem. So yeah, I'd highly recommend you look into ADFS and, you know, find a partner that knows about this type of these technologies, and walk through with your security team what their concerns are, understand what the business requirements are, and try to help map that to the capabilities and security features.
Fantastic. Do you have anything else?
Looks like that's the last one.
Okay. Well, what you talked about really is, I guess, a good segue into how can Coretek help. And really what we're trying to do through the webinar is illustrate to you what EMS can do, but also really what's the market doing? What are the threats that are present for you today? What we'd like to be able to do is sit down with you and look at your organization, look at your users, look at potential threats that you have, and help you design a solution that takes advantage of some of these technologies that Chris has highlighted through the webinar series. So we'll put our contact information up. Please feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to have the chance to sit down with you. Again, thank you for your time. I really, really appreciate you joining us, and watch for more webinars coming soon.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Bye.